Hello and welcome back to Gapeys Grow Room. It is time for more seed starting. So last week I started the larger tomato varieties and the paste tomatoes, and it looks like there was a lot of interest to see what cherry tomatoes I'm going to be growing this year. So that is what this week's video is on. I've got a mix of determinants, indeterminates, a few dwarfs and micro dwarfs, so a pretty good variety. And I'll be going over each one of those, and I'll show you some pictures of what each one looks like and what type of tomato it is and where I got them from. So just like last week, almost all of these came from the Rare Tomato Seed Swap on Instagram. So I get a lot of my tomato varieties from there, and that is mostly what I'll be growing this season. So they're almost all new to me. There is one cherry tomato that I grow in my garden every year, and we'll take a look at that too. And at the end of the video, I'm going to show you an update on how the tomatoes we started last week are doing, and I have some good news to share on that, so stay tuned. If you watched last week's video on starting the larger size tomatoes, we're starting the cherry tomatoes pretty much exactly the same way. I've got 10 different varieties we're going to be starting, and I've got a 6-cell tray here and a 4-cell tray here filled with pre-moistened Jiffy seed starting mix, and I've already pre-drilled some holes. There's 5 holes in each cell that I used just a pencil to go down about a ½ inch deep. And we're going to be putting 5 seeds in each cell. Each cell will have a different variety. So we're going to start with the one tomato that I've been growing in my garden every single year for the past, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, however long I've been growing these. This is the Berries Crazy Cherry, and it's my favorite cherry tomato. It's got a really sweet flavor. It's very, very productive. It's considered a microflora, I believe it's called, and that just means that the cherry tomatoes grow in really, really large clusters. So this is going to be one that I continue to grow in my garden every single year. And I believe the original seeds I got from Baker Creek many years ago, and I've been saving the seeds and growing them out every year. So I've already got my labels pre-made as well. So that's the only one I did not get from a seed swap. All right, next up we've got egg yolk. So this one came from the Rare Tomato Seed Swap, I believe last year, and this came from Northwoods Farmstead, and it looks like she's got a little origami seed packet that she created. So this egg yolk variety, her description is that it's a vibrant yellow and very sweet early season, about 65 days, which is pretty short. Now this next cherry tomato is also from Northwoods Farmstead. This one is called Black Strawberry. So the description that she put on this one is that it's a deep pink in color with golden marbling and bluish purple shoulders. It's considered an early variety, but I would classify it as late season, about 90 days. So 90 days is much, much longer than the previous cherry tomato. That's actually pretty long for a cherry tomato. So I would also consider that a late season if it truly does take 90 days. And all of these that I've started so far are considered indeterminate cherry tomatoes, so they'll just keep producing as long as the season allows it. So this one here is called Perfection in Pink, and this one is from Liz Janausek, and this also came from the Rare Tomato Seed Swap. She describes this one as pink with antho splash shoulders, and it is a 60-day variety. This is considered a pretty early season variety. Now the next two going into this tray are going to be dwarf tomatoes. I don't typically grow many dwarf tomatoes. I might have only grown one last year, but this year we're going to be growing this one here called Bendigo Drop. This one is from Red Shed Farm Stand, and I got this from the Rare Tomato Seed Swap last year. So she says this one is a pink grape, and it's a mid to late season. And this one is an indeterminate variety. A lot of the dwarf tomatoes are determinate rather than indeterminate, but this one in particular is apparently indeterminate, and it is part of the Dwarf Tomato Project. And if you're not familiar with that project, that is just a project where they created a bunch of dwarf tomato varieties. I believe they were all developed in the United States, and this is one of them. But there are probably hundreds of these Dwarf Tomato Project tomatoes. And then this other one is also a dwarf tomato. This is called Rosita Brandywine. And this one came from The Desert Smells Like Veggies on Instagram. And this also is a rare tomato seed swap tomato. And her description of this one is a large, round, pink cherry tomato packed with flavor of brandywine beefsteak. And it's a short, 2-foot, determinate plant, great for containers and small spaces. So since this is a determinate variety, that means it typically will make all its fruit ripen at the same time. So it will not continue to produce flowers and will just basically end its season. So once this is done producing, we can plant something else in that spot. Now these next 4 varieties are going to be the micro dwarf tomatoes, and I do have one other type. This one is a hanging basket variety called Shimo Fury, and I always try to grow at least one hanging basket variety of tomato. They're called tumbling tomatoes. So this one came from Guava Nut in the Rare Tomato Seed Swap last year, and this one is a determinate red variety called Shimo Fury. And what is really cool about this one is that it apparently has variegated leaves. So that is pretty exciting. I think it may be the only tumbling tomato variety that has variegated leaves. So that one should be fun. Okay, now the rest of these are going to be micro dwarf tomatoes. And this is also something I just recently started getting into growing. I think I grew 3 varieties last year. And this year I've got 3 also. This one is called Aztec. And this one came from Rhiannon's garden, and I believe it was in the Rare Tomato Seed Swap as well. I've done other swaps with her, so it's possible it came from one of our other swaps, but pretty sure that's where this one came from. And I don't have too much information on this one. I do know that it's an orange variety. I tried to pick micro dwarfs that were different colors, so each of these micro dwarfs that I'm growing are different colors. Now this next one is called Birdie's Rouge, and this one is from Speech Devil on Instagram from the Rare Tomato Seed Swap. And it is a early red cherry tomato. I'm not sure if it's indeterminate or determinate. It doesn't say, but a lot of these micro dwarfs are determinates. Okay, now our last one is called Fat Frog. And this one came from Matsutake, who I've done a lot of swaps with in the past, but I'm pretty sure she sent this one as part of the Rare Tomato Seed Swap. And this one seems to be gaining in popularity. I'm not sure if it's a new variety, but a lot of people seem to be growing this one this year or are looking for seeds. And she only sent, I think she only sent 5 seeds, so we're going to be growing all 5 of these. But the description she gave on this one is, this one, tough tomato. First year I grew it indoors over the winter and then transplanted it into the garden. It refused to die. This year I grew it in a much kinder manner and it did not disappoint. Large cherry that ripens into a muted greenish yellow, and it gets 10 to 14 inches tall. So it sounds like this one could be an indeterminate micro dwarf, since she said it wouldn't die. So normally a determinate will die after it produces fruit. So this one should be a fun one to try. Okay, those are all of the cherry tomatoes I'm going to be growing. So we're going to go ahead and add a little bit of water to the tops of each of these cells. And we're going to go put these into our germination tray that we have set up in the grow tent. We still have some peppers here in our germination tray that have not sprouted yet. I seem to be having some difficulty sprouting some of my peppers, but we've got some onions in the back there as well. So I'm going to put these over here next to the peppers and add our humidity dome and cover it back up with this blanket. And I do have these on a heat mat set to 75 degrees. So we should see germination in about 5 or 6 days. So here is our 10 cells of tomatoes that we started last week. This 6-cell tray is the one that has all of our paste tomatoes in it. And as you can see, we've got a lot of seedlings up in each of those cells. We had pretty much a 100% germination on that whole tray. At least 5 seeds are up in each of those cells, which is pretty awesome. Now the 4-cell tray here has all of our beefsteak tomatoes. We had pretty good germination there as well. We have at least a few up in each of those cells. However, our SGT pepper back here, we only had 2 of those come up, and both of them have what's called helmet head. So it's when the seed gets stuck to the top of the seedling. So I'm hoping they break out of that, but if they don't, we may not be able to grow that variety. It only took 4 to 5 days for our tomatoes that we started last week to germinate, so I'm hoping that the cherry tomatoes also germinate that fast. I also wanted to ask for some suggestions on some unusual or rare cherry tomatoes that you've grown and loved, because I'm going to be on the lookout for some new varieties to try next year. And we don't get a whole lot of cherry tomatoes in the rare tomato seed swap, so I'll definitely be on the lookout for some new varieties to try. And if you have any seeds available for trading or swapping, let me know, because I'd be up for that. If you're over on Instagram, follow me at Gapey for lots of updates from the grow room. I post stories on there pretty much on a daily basis with a few updates, and I'll be sure to post when my cherry tomato seeds start germinating on there. So thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you again soon. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. You can also find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.